root nafal, which means to fall. And from some of your prayers, you might recognize the term nepilat apayim, falling on one's face. Right? It's usually done during tahanun after the Amidah, right? Right? And we'll even get to a source where Moses falls on his face. But typically, when we speak about prostration, there's two terms that get used the most often. And we typically say it during the Aleinu prayer. You guys probably recognize it. This is our first source, right? Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim, right? Right? So in English, you'll often hear that korim u'mishtachavim are translated as we bow, we prostrate ourselves. Does anybody want to take a guess what korim or mishtachavim mean? Anyone? That's interesting. What did you say? Korim is on your? It's just you bow. Interesting. Okay. I agree with your first definition for korim, and we'll get into that. For those of us just joining, we're starting on the first source, right? We just sang the beginning of the Aleinu prayer, right? Because that's where we get the two most common terms for prostration, korim and umishtachavim, right? So we see these pairings of words happen pretty regularly. We also have in Esther, right? And all the king's courtiers in the palace, right? They did korim umishtachavim, and that's translated as they knelt and bowed low to Haman, for such was the king's order concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel or bow low, right? And it's that same, right? Korim always comes before mishtachavim. Yes?
Just to make an important announcement that will be carried out later. Thanks and think are the same words in English and in German. Denker and Danker. So when you offer thanks, you're thinking on something.
Okay, perfect. We'll save more stuff for the end. Yes?
Question, ceremonial. A lot of people bow at the beginning of the phrase, but
Korim, yeah.
no, even before.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll kind of get into those. Those will slowly get addressed as we get throughout the learning, right? So, but what I wanted to just highlight is it's not usually mishtachavim ve'korim. It's usually always presented korim and then hishtachavim, right? And we'll get into that why that happens. So we're going to go now to 2 Chronicles. All the Israelites witnessed the descent of the fire and glory of the Lord of the house. They yichreu, right? Apayim, right? So they bow down on their faces, right? And then artza al hartsefa vishtahavu, right? And then they prostrated themselves, praising, right? He is the Lord, this is good. So we get these terms over and over and over again. Now we'll get to the second page, and this is a verse from 1 Kings, and we get that word kara again, but it's a little bit different because it's not on the face or on the ground. Can anyone describe what Solomon is doing?
Kneeling.
He's kneeling, and what is he doing with his hands? Right? He's got them up, right? Whether it's like this, right, or whether it's up high, right? But he's still on his knees, right? His face isn't on the ground, but he's on his knees, but we're still using that same word kara, right? So let's go over to Rambam's Mishnah Torah, because I think this is where most of us really get familiar with this word, right? Can anyone start reading the English? Anyone want to take a guess? Yes, right up front.
Bowing, what is implied? One frame bows 5 times in each and every Amidah. In the first blessing, at the beginning and at the end. In the blessing of thanks at the beginning and at the end, and upon completing the Amidah, one bows and takes 3 steps backwards while bowing. We take leave from the left and afterwards from the right. Then we lift up the head from the bowed position. When we bow the other 4 times, we do so at the utterance of the word blessed and straighten up when reciting God's name.
Right? So this gets translated as bow. And I think when most of us read this in English, I think most of us are thinking of like this kind of motion, right?
But there's also the part where you bend your knee first and then you bow.
Oh, where does it say to bend your knee first?
No, I've just seen a lot of Orthodox still do this.
Right. So I didn't bring this in the source sheet, but That's usually for Kabbalistic reasons. It's usually for Kabbalistic reasons. It's not actually listed in any kind of requirement. You're not going to find that in the Mishnah Torah anywhere. It's a minhag, right? And I think it's a minhag to replace something because I think we know something is missing. Now, if we go to the next page. Well, we'll continue to define all the terms, and we'll see. All right, but maybe you want to read the next source from the Mishnah Torah on the next page. Turn it over. What does it say for Korea?
This is
Yep.
Mishnah Torah, prayer and priestly blessing. Kneeling always refers to falling to one's knees.
So even though this is the same English translation, they did not choose to translate kaf resh ayin as bow. They translated it as kneel. And the reason they're translating it as kneel is because Rambam is saying something really important about this word. Rambam is saying the one absolute defining feature of this word is that it is always, how is it done? On the knees. Always. You can have your hands up here. You can have them stretched out here. You can have your face to the ground. But where must you always be? On your knees. Kaf resh ayin, always, always, always on your knees. We're going to save our questions toward the end. And we see this also in Ezra, right? We see that word echra'ah, right? Ezra, he goes down. I got down on my knees, al birkai, and he spreads out his hands to the Lord his God. So even though he's on his knees, he's spreading his hands, right? And just to highlight how often we as a people did things on our knees, who knows the Hebrew word for knees? Birkai, right? And what's the word for blessing? Baruch. Anyone notice a similarity there? It's the same root. Barachot, birkav, it's the same root. Because typically, right, we're from a people that's thousands of years old. Chairs are a very recent invention, right? So most of us, we're sitting on the floor, we're kneeling on the floor, we're eating on the floor, everything is on the floor. You have little tables that you bring in and you take out, but everything is typically on the floor. But let's get the set table, all right? So we're getting into Brown Driver Briggs, right? This is a lexicon, and they translate it kaf resh ayin as bow down, and they talk about all sorts of times it happens. You can see it's all over to the Bible. It means to bow down to drink. It means to bow down like a crouching lion, so it's used for animals as well, this word, right? It's not reserved just for prayer. It's also used to describe childbirth, right? Because if before you have chairs and you have all sorts of things, right, if the moment hits you, you might just collapse down on your knees. And we see that source from 1 Samuel 4:19. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was with child about to give birth. When she heard the report that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law, her husband, were dead, she seized with labor. And what does the English say? She crouched down. She fell down on her knees and gave birth.
There's an earlier source when Hagar and Sarah says, you will give birth on your knees, on me, basically, and this will be mine.
Ooh, maybe next time I need to use that source. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, so now another thing that Brown Driver Briggs brought down, and it's a long source. I brought the source from Judges. We're not going to read the whole thing because it's a really long source, but it's an important one. It's the story of Gideon, right? This is where we have our famous story of 300 soldiers fought off an entire army, right? And I'm going to break down how this goes. God says to Gideon, you have too many troops with you. Basically, I'm God, I'm so worried that you guys will fight this off and you'll think that you did it. You're going to send some of these home. So they say anyone who's scared can leave. A bunch of people leave. 22,000 of our troops leave, and we are left with our own army of 10,000. And God says, this is still too many troops, right? You won't think this is miraculous, right? You got to send even more people home. So God tells Gideon to do something. He has all the people go to I believe the river, and he says, set apart those who lap up the water with their tongues like dogs from all those who get down on their knees to drink. And we're using that same word, kaf resh ayin, again. But what is God saying? God is saying to distinguish between two different groups. Those who will reach into the water and drink with their hand, which is how I would drink water, as opposed to those who will get down on their knees and stick their face in the water. Do you want to guess? How many people did which one?
Lappers were 300.
The one who drank like this. We're 300. That means 9,700, their go-to for drinking water was to get down on their knees and put their face in the water. That was their go-to.
To be fair, it's a time when hand sanitation was not such a thing.
Sure. But all I'm trying to highlight is that culturally, this form, this movement, is everywhere and everything. This is the normative movement. It's the normative movement for saying blessings. It's the normative movement for drinking. It's the normative movement for showing respect to people. This is how we lived our lives. The abnormal is the ones who use their hands. What we would now consider normal, yes.
I believe something to be true. Check me out on it. We know the word for me, myself, is ani. And nun is what a person looks like sideways. So a nun and a knee and ani are something very important in the blessing. And ani can be important to the legs being able to carry a body along. If it wouldn't be knees, we couldn't step along.
Thank you for adding that. Next time, can we try to keep it on topic of what we're discussing? Right. Our next source is, I posited an argument that our normative way of doing worship and living our life is on our knees. And you may ask, well, how is that, right? I mean, we're synagogues, we have chairs. If anyone wants to prostrate, right, we got to go out in the hallways, or we got to go out in the aisle, right? Rambam actually brings down how we used to pray. Mishnah Torah, prayer and priestly blessing, 11:5. Synagogues and houses of study should be treated with respect. They should be swept and cleaned and mopped. All the Jews of Spain, the West, that's the Maghreb, Babylonia and Eretz Yisrael are accustomed to light lamps in the synagogue and then do what? Right. So, prayer rugs. All the Jews of Israel, of the Maghreb, of Spain, they all utilize prayer rugs because prayer is done on the ground. And this isn't the Rambam's time. We're out of biblical times. We've been out of biblical times for like 1,500 years at this point. Right? This is still our custom. But he makes an interesting comment. In European communities, they sit on chairs. Now we have chairs. But where are the chairs? Are they in the Middle East yet? No, they're in Europe. And what is really difficult to do once you have chairs? Prostrate. Prostrate, right? Once you have chairs, prostration is kind of like not an option anymore, even if you wanted to, right? You got to make space, or it might look out of place, right? They do. The Catholics themselves kneel, and we'll get more into that. We'll get a bit more into that. Our next set of sources is pictures, because what is life without pictures? The first set of pictures are of Samaritans, which, for those of you who don't know, they are a people who claim to be Jewish from the 10 northern tribes. So we say they were brought in by the Assyrians. We say that they were moved in. They don't make that claim. They claim they were the ones left behind. So I'm not going to take a side on this issue, but what I would want to say is that I don't think they ever lost the tradition for how to pray. Right, and this is our first source, these two black and white pictures. These are the Samaritans still preserving kaf resh ayin, kara, right? And they have it in various forms, right? We see the hands up. We see face down. We go to the next one. We have some color. We get to see the prayer rugs that they use. The bottom picture, the bottom color picture is actually Karaites. Anyone here know who Karaites are? Right. They don't accept the entirety of our oral tradition. They accept some things. For example, we make the claim that the new moon was done by an eyewitness. They accept that tradition. So when the rest of us started using a fixed calendar, they always stayed in Egypt so they could send someone to Eretz Israel to watch for the new moon. They accepted that tradition from us, and then they preserved it. But what else did they preserve? Kneeling down in prayer. If you go to then the next page, they even on their website have a handy breakdown. They don't define all the same terms as we do. You might be able, if you have really good eyesight, there's numbers, and they actually describe how they define each form. I'm sorry I couldn't really make it bigger. But underneath that yellow picture, we get to Ethiopian Jews. And I'm only showing one Ethiopian Jewish picture now. We'll do more of that later. But even for the Ethiopians, you see there are some that they're on their knees, but their face is up with their hands. Some, their face is down. But either way, we have all of what we might call the fringe Jewish groups. They've all managed to preserve something that we have seemingly lost. Because according to the Rambam, how often should we be kneeling? Is it something that's supposed to just be for Yom Kippur and when is it supposed to be happening? Every time we do the Elena, but even one more common than that. The Amidah. We should be on our knees for every single Amidah. Every day. Even if we didn't have the Elena at all. For every Amidah, we should be on our knees, bare minimum. That's from the Rambam, right? Because kara, kaf, resh, ayin, in every place, on your knees. That's what you read, right? Every time it says, no, that's the halacha. Because kaf, resh, ayin, its defining factor is being on your knees. It cannot be done any other way, right? It's a different word. You would have to use a different word. Kaf, resh, ayin is always on your knees. So I'm going to introduce a source from Isaiah 44, and I'm going to introduce it because we're going to start getting a new root here, a word that exists in more commonly in Arabic and Aramaic and Amharic. So Isaiah 44:15, I'm going to read the English, and then I'll get to the Hebrew when it's pertinent. All this serves a mortal for fuel. He takes some to warm himself, and he builds a fire and bakes bread. He's talking about wood. And he also makes a god of it and worships it, fashions an idol, and bows down to it. So this is where he's using two repetitive words for effect. And one of them we know, hishtachavah, right? That's the word for prostration. We'll get to that. But also a word, sagad. You guys see that with samech gimel dalet? That word is going to come up a lot more. But what it seems to be used is it's apparently a different root for hishtachavah, right? That's how it's being used. Now let's go ahead and define hishtachavah. Anyone want to read the hishtachavah for the Rambam? And I'll bring the mic. Anyone? Yeah? You? Did you want to read it? Yeah.
Prostration, what is implied? After one lifts his head from the fifth bow in the Amidah, he sits on the ground, falls with his face towards the earth, and utters all the supplications that he desires. Prostration is stretching out on one's hands and feet until he is flat with his face on the ground.
All right. So I think we're now going to see why we get kara and then hishtachavah. Why it's always that order and not the other way around. Because you just finished doing what? The Amidah, right? Right? So you just finished your last bow, so you're still here. So you sit down, and then now from here, how do you move your body? Now you go flat, and you stretch out your hands all the way, right? And I think now we get to understand why it's kara first, because it'd be hard to go flat from here. It'd be painful, right? That's right. So the preparation for going flat is always to get on your knees first, right? And so that's why we see it in Esther. That's why we see it all over the place. And that's how it is for the Amidah as well. You start here, you finish your last bow, and you're still just sitting here. And then when you're ready to supplicate, you will go flat with your face on the floor. And this type of prostration is used all the time as well. It's not just used for holy purposes. Our next source is Genesis 33:3. And he, Jacob, passed over before them. This is where he's going to go meet his brother. And what does he do? 7 times. Does he bow? No, he gets all the way flat 7 times. This is the more respectful form. He could have done Korach, which is just right here on his knees. That would be a lot for us to just get on our knees. That's a lot of respect to show someone. But he wanted to show his brother even more. And he didn't just prostrate once. How many times did he prostrate? 7 times. And he was successful, right? What was he trying to avoid? He was trying to avoid getting killed by his brother, punishment, right? He stole a birthright. His brother had what seemed like an army. And he was like, I want to show you the utmost respect. I want to show you that I'm not the person that you remember. I'm a different person now, and I'm going to show it to you because even though I have the inheritance, I am prostrating before you, and not even just once. 7 times, right? And this is something that Esau is going to see, right?
He tricked him out of the Korach, out of the birthright, but he stole the blessing.
Yes.
2 terrible things.
He did 2 terrible things to his brother, right? We could go back and forth on all the terrible things, but either way, Jacob knows that Esau has an agenda, a legitimate agenda. And Jacob is going, I need to try to set this right. Let me set the tone. I'm going to set the tone by showing you the ultimate respect. Because you are never more helpless than when you are laying flat on the ground with your face on the ground, right? You are defenseless. You can't do anything. We then move on to our next source, which will be... So we just read that in Hebrew, and I just brought the Onkelos translation, right? Because we said this is the full prostration. And what shoresh does Onkelos use for this full prostration? I bolded it out on the net. On Sin Gimel Dalet, right? That's sagad again, right? For those of you who don't know Arabic, sujud or sugud is their word for prostration. They get it from this root that we used in Isaiah, this root that we use in all of our Aramaic translations. Their word for bowing comes from the same word that we also use for bowing and prostration. Mizgad, right. Yes, it is. Because it's the place in which you prostrate, right? And for those of us who saw the name of this class, right, what the Bible is not confused about, prostration is worship. The words for prostration are interchangeable with the words for worship. It's not, and that's this. It works in Hebrew, it works in Aramaic, it works in Amharic, it works in Arabic. I'm not a rabbi. Can we save the questions more toward the end? I'm about to get to the next point. So Brown Driver Briggs, we're going to use sagad to prostrate oneself in worship, right? And they bring all the Aramaic sources. They bring the Ethiopic. They bring the Arabic, right? And they even say that it prostrates self one as prayer, right? You get mosque. So there, Brown Driver Briggs is putting all that together for you. And even when we get to the same source where we were just in Genesis with Jacob and Esau, Saadia... the tafsir of the Rasag, who translates the Torah into English by Saadia Gaon, he also uses that Samech Gimel Dalet to translate for prostration, right? So that root gets used a lot. Now, why am I bringing this Samech Gimel Dalet root over and over again? Because our Jewish brothers, the Ethiopians, have a holiday called prostration. If you go to the next page, it's called Sigd. Happens after Yom Kippur. It is a holiday dedicated to prostration. Now, Sigd is a catch-all for prostration. It can mean on the knees. It can mean fully flat on the ground. And so that's why you'll see, for their holiday, they're doing all the different forms of it. In Hebrew, we distinguish. We have kaf resh ayin for being on your knees, and we have hishtachavah for lying flat down. For the other languages, they just use sagad or sigd, and it covers both. And if you wanted to read it, I just took this from Wikipedia, but even, they even call their Batei Knesset Mesged for the same thing. It's the place in which you go to prostrate.
Worship is better than worship.
Right. So, if this is so pivotal, if this is so much a part of our tradition, like, when did it stop? Why? And why did it stop, right? It seems to be we, the Jewish people, couldn't drink water without prostrating. And now, we stand out if we do that in any kind of capacity, and we save it for just a few times of the year. So the Rambam brought us down that these words are always on your knees for Korach and for hishtachavah, that's laying down flat. By the time his son rolls around, people are not prostrating as much. My next source is Hamaspik Le'ovdei Hashem. It's called The Guide to Serving God by Abraham ben Harambam. This is the Rambam's son. I've left a little intro here if you want to read the blurb about it. But he is writing a comment because people are not prostrating as much anymore. So I'm going to read that for you in English. Any commandment of the Torah or custom of the prophets or tradition we have received may not be stopped for the reason that the Gentiles do it for their religion. He's implying something here. Anyone want to guess what he's implying up front?
Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi said Jews have kneeling envy, that once the Catholics started doing it, we had to give it up.
So, right? Well, he's speaking about Europe. Abraham ben Harambam is saying the Muslims are prostrating. And now we want to stop because we look the same. And people are starting to say, well, the Muslims are doing it, so we should stop. And he is saying, is that allowed? No, it's our tradition. We don't get to just go, no. Like, we received it from the prophets, right? It's any commandment or custom of the prophets or tradition we have received may not be stopped for the reason that the Gentiles do it for their religion. By this, I refer to the lack of sincerity in prayer. People claim that the congregation is too weak for this imposition of prostration. And though you might say it would be better for me to prevent the community from sins and urge them to do good deeds, all of these are important. What I am suggesting is that prostration relates to the commandments of worship, awe, and love of God. We should first correct the foundation upon which the structure stands. Rambam's son is implying something. He's implying that, yes, I could tell people go do more good deeds, but the foundation is that we need to have awe and respect of God. And one of the main ways in which we can build that foundation is by prostrating. If you're not prostrating, then you're just doing good deeds for some other reason. You're not doing it out of reverence because you're not really willing to revere God. You're not willing to get on the ground and show him the ultimate respect. If Jacob was willing to show his brother that much respect, how much respect should we be showing God? Right? This is the son of the Rambam's thinking process. And to build on that, I want to bring an example from Numbers for just how prostration is used to show respect, how it's used even potentially to diffuse situations. Who here has heard of Korach? Right? Korach, right? Who here wants to give a shout out of what Korach did? Like, what did he do? He rebelled, right? He rebelled. Right? He rebelled against Moses and Aaron. Now, why did he rebel against Moses and Aaron?
He was also of the same tribe, and he said that they should let everyone share from that tribe in the responsibilities and the connection to God.
Right, but before that, he makes I think, a more substantiated claim, right? So they combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, you have gone too far, for all the community is holy. That's what you said. And for all of them, Hashem is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourself? Now, what he's saying is he sees nepotism. And if I would have been Korach, I would have seen it too. Right? Who happens to be the leader? Moses, okay. Who happens to be the head of the priests? Moses' brother. Okay, who happens to lead the women's stuff? Miriam, Moses' sister. You know, they were completely estranged for 40 years. Aaron made the golden calf, of which a bunch of people died over. How did he end up on top? Right? That's Korach's argument. Right? It's not unthinkable that he would have this perspective. But I want to look at Moses' response, because Moses is called the most humble man on the earth, and I think what happens with Korach really proves that. Because Korach comes to Moses and says, why have you put yourself above the congregation? We're all holy, we can all do that. And in our modern day, if we were Moses, we might go, hey, I'm the one who talks to God, right? Like, I'm not doing anything. God is the one who's told me all this. We'd get defensive, we'd make our point. Moses does something else. Moses falls on his face. And someone said, does falling count as prostration? Yes, it does, because the word here doesn't actually use kara or hishtachavah. We actually get that, I think it's yipol. Yeah, vayipol al panav. He literally falls on his face, right? And when Moses heard this, he fell on his face. Then he spoke to Korach and all his company, saying, come morning, Hashem will make known, yada, yada, yada. So, does anyone want to come up here and pretend to be Korach for me for a second? Because I think this really highlights the story. Who here wants to be Korach? Come on. Come challenge me. I don't want to be Korach. Anyone want to be Korach? All right, you're going to be Korach. Not you? Okay, you'll be Korach. All right? So you challenge me, right?
Who do you think you are? We're all holy. What the heck?
Right? Now, not only that, I think Moses speaks from down here. Moses, I believe, speaks down here. Come morning, Hashem will make known who is God's and who is holy by granting direct access to the one whom he has chosen will be granted access. Right? Was that a very particular vibe? Right? Right? He is calming Korach. He is supplicating Korach. He's showing Korach the ultimate respect. He's even speaking on the ground. When I was looking for sources to back up my idea that Moses spoke from that position, I actually found a whole bunch of sources that didn't want to admit this. They said that Moses is actually kneeling to pray on Korach's behalf. He's praying for all these kinds of reasons. I actually had to find a more obscure source from Siftei Hachamim, and he makes the point that Moses is bowing because of the dispute. You might ask, surely above regarding the incident of the spies, it is written, and Moses and Aaron fell upon their faces. Right? The answer is that in the above case of the spies, they fell upon their faces to pray. So he's acknowledging that sometimes when our patriarchs do this, it's to pray. But then he says, but when that happens in the spies, it says they didn't say anything. So you can say that they prayed. However, here, in this instance, Moshe spoke to Korach, which implies that he fell upon his face. While he was on his face, he spoke to them. Now, why did he do this? Why did he fall upon his face? Because of the dispute. Now, we have a rabbi in the room. I believe this is a rabbinic term, like for the sake of the dispute. Like we do that. We do some things for the sake of dispute, right, Rabbi? Like we calm things, we make things more peaceful, right? So, what the Siftei Hachamim is saying is that Moses is diffusing the situation. And he's saying, God will sort this out tomorrow, and I'm showing you the ultimate respect. You came here and accused me of nepotism, and therefore I prostrate before you. I am not above you. God will make this choice. I don't have anything to do with this. Right? And we don't, and I bring another source because we even bow to the people that are not supposed to even be in the land once we're there to conquer, right? When we are going to conquer the land, we have to get rid of all of the Canaanite nations, right? Including the people of Het. But in Genesis 23:7, when Moses is looking to purchase a grave for Sarah, When Abraham stood up and bowed him to buy a place for Sarah, he stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, to the people of Het. And it's not even bowed, right? Because bowing implies on his knees. Is that the word that's getting used there? No, it's hishtachavah, right? So he gets full down, flat down with his hands out in order to ask for this grave. So is this a practice we have just for religious reasons? No. Apparently it's for real estate. Apparently it's, when you have a dispute and you want to calm things down, right? It gets used all over the place. Apparently it's for drinking, right? But really what it comes down to is that it's about respect, and it's about awe, and it's about supplication and saying, I know that you're above me, so I bring myself down beneath you. To be humble. Humility starts with prostration, and according to the Rambam's son, humility is where prayer starts. When we prostrate, we are showing and we are making ourselves humble, right? It's not just an idea. It's a physical act. And according to the Rambam's son, you cannot it's hard to have humility if you're not willing to put yourself down low in front of someone or in front of God. So then why did we stop? Right? There's lots of different reasons as why we might stop. Some rabbis will say, well, the Christians started doing it. The Rambam's son says, well, the Muslims started doing it. And I actually, for the last page, I copied some sources by someone I had the honor of learning from, Professor Marty Lokshin. He wrote an article on the website, thetorah.org, called Prostration to God and Humans, a Biblical Practice. And I brought some excerpts from his article because he does a good job kind of answering why it might have stopped. And I'm sorry that the text is small, but I could only fit so much on here. Rabbinic literature explicitly permits prostrating before another human being. For example, expanding on the verse that prohibits prostration before idols, the Talmud states, before them idols you may not prostrate yourself, but you may prostrate yourself before a person. Like yourself. You're a person. You can prostrate before a person. A person can prostrate before you.
It's the kamocha part of it that grabs my attention.
Yeah, and then we'll get to the next source. A baraita, right? So what are they actually referring here? One of my first sources I brought to you was from Esther, right? In which Mordecai is not bowing to Haman. And the rabbis are grappling with, well, why isn't he prostrating before Haman? Are we allowed to? Yes, right. If you can prostrate to a Canaanite, why not? If you can prostrate before Korach, why not Haman? So the Talmud wants to answer this because this actually strikes out to us. I think some people read Esther and go, oh, we don't bow anymore, or we don't bow. The Talmud doesn't take that opinion because that's not how the people in the Talmud are practicing. So they instead say, a Baraita brings down how, then questions whether humans can bow down to someone who considers themselves divine, like Haman. Is it then permissible to prostrate yourself before a person who is worshipped as a deity, as Haman was worshipped? No. And that is why the verse continues, you shall not worship them. So according to the Talmud, why could we not worship Haman? Because he thought he was elevated to be like the deity, because most kings believe they're deities, right? And so the Talmud is saying, if you are in front of a king who also thinks that he is a god, or it's a prince, or someone who happens to be appointed higher that day, if they think that they are somehow divine, that is when you cannot prostrate before them. But when they are a person like yourself, prostration is appropriate. He brings down sources, why is it rarely practiced? And again, you can read his article on thetorah.org. It's fascinating, and he has a lot of stuff. He brings down, according to the English historian of ancient Rome, J.P.V.D. Baltzan, in ordinary social life, such physical abasement like prostration was not practiced by the Greeks themselves. This social practice startled and shocked the Greeks. The act, indeed, was for all Greeks the typical indication of Oriental servility. This is a thing that those Orientals do, this weird thing where they get on the ground. Like what? And they regarded it as comic or humiliating. We view it as humbling. They view it as humiliating. Ehrlich proposes that when the rabbis of the land of Israel were creating a new style of prayer after the destruction of the temple, prostration no longer had a cultural meaning. Once this meaning was gone, then, as Bildstein wrote, opposition to prostration could be seen either as a rejection of public self-humiliation or a discouragement of demonstrative pietism. Now, those are very fancy words to say, but what they're really implying is that now that prostration is no longer common, if someone does it, they're saying, look at me. Look at how humble I am. I'm getting on the floor and the rest of you are not. Once it becomes that rare, and now it sticks out like a sore thumb. And in fact, the Meiri, Menachem Meiri, writing in the 14th century Provence, writes, an important person may not portray himself in front of the community as being so pious that he prostrates in front of them. Perhaps if Meiri had been living in a country where people regularly prostrated themselves before other human beings as a sign of deference or fealty, he would not have seen prostration before God as a demonstration of false piety.
So is this same person that we just spoke about, does he think that Moses prostrating himself before Korach was a false piety?
You'll have to ask the Meiri, right?
Right?
But I think the Meiri is living in a time in which prostration is done. Either way, right? It's just not common. And we, as Americans, prostration is done. It's not common. If all of us were going to go to a river to drink water, not one of us, I don't think, is going to get on our knees and put our face in that water, right? If we were to invite Muslims here, we might be a little bit uncomfortable with their prostration because it seems so not normative to us. Because we live in a place in which there is no more prostration. So prostration for us is a sign of either fake piety, or it's kind of humiliation, or it's just culturally other now to us. When in reality, you couldn't drink water, give birth, say a baracha. You couldn't do any of these things without prostrating before. Yes?
May I say, I know growing up and the way I grew up in the Pentecostal faith, that in the church, what they call the Churches of God in Christ, that was very common. My dad being a pastor, and then for 50 years, we would so often, they would prostrate themselves.
Yes.
But it was not just one person typically.
No, it would be everybody, right?
Well, not everyone did it because some were not
Able.
able to do it. But as a rule, that was very common. So I guess for me, it doesn't seem that abnormal to, and to just to prostrate yourself before the Creator.
Right.
It's a way of, to me, of just really pouring your heart out to Him and just weeping.
Right.
And not caring really what's going on around you, and not being affected by it because you are, for that's just one person's opinion.
And I know a lot of other Christians who hold the same opinion, and you can even have, like, I brought the Ethiopian Jews who prostrate. The regular Ethiopian Christians also prostrate. And they claim that they got their tradition from us. And Christians will say they got their tradition from us because you read any, like, how many sources did I bring from Tanakh, right? People are prostrating all over the place, right? They get it from us.
Also, the Episcopalians kneel.
The Episcopalians kneel? Like the Catholics do.
Yeah, Anglicans too.
Anglicans too.
Episcopalian is Anglican like, and Anglican is Catholic. Yeah, they kneel. Yeah.
So how did the Amidah, I mean, I thought that's the standing prayer. Why is it called that?
I mean, because it's called the Amidah because what is the norm? What is the normative form of prayer in Judaism? On your knees. Why do we call it the Amidah? Because it stands out, because there are parts of it in which you stand. It's the only prayer in which we stand, so we call it the standing prayer instead of its name, which is Shmoneh Esrei, the 18 benedictions, right? We call it the standing prayer because when we made this prayer, it's the one we do standing up. All the rest we do here. Right? These terms are not accidental. It's the standing prayer because it's the only one in which we stand in. Otherwise, here we are.
Another thing, if I may share, is that for me personally, I find it to be, especially if I'm just really grieving about something or my heart is broken, or I just need to lay prostrate, as my dad would say, before the Creator. And it allows me to just forget and just leap before God in His presence. And I know that's not as common after being involved in too many things.
And I want to say that it used to be common because what is tahanun? Anybody know? Is tahanun a happy prayer that we do? No, right? That's our supplicative prayer, right? That's the prayer in which we're crying, we're doing supplication. And that is the prayer in which we fully lie down and prostrate, the one in which we are begging forgiveness. Because, as you described, sometimes you're so overwhelmed, you don't even have the strength to stand. You just need to lay there and cry. And the Rambam and the Talmud would say, yes, that is the form you should be. When you need that supplication, you should be laying down and crying and begging God for forgiveness and supplication. Yes.
But we don't do that nowadays.
Right. Nowadays, we substitute falling on your face as leaning on your face, right? But really, it should be on the floor. We just no longer do it. Every tahanun, every napilat pain should be on the floor, fully stretched out, according to the Rambam, according to the Talmud, where in which he gets this. We don't do it anymore because it's false piety, because it's weird, because it's no longer our culture. But what she's saying is, for her, that might be the only form in which she really feels so humble, so vulnerable. Vulnerable is the word I want to use here. When you are laying down on the floor, you are vulnerable and you can just let it all out, right? That is how our ancient mind saw it for thousands of years. And it's only in the past, the Rambam is talking about chairs in Europe, right? That starts the tide. So about the year 1000, all of these prostration customs start falling away.
Do you think if we had a culture that included bowing like the Japanese do you think we would have kept it?
I mean, the Jews in the Middle East eventually stopped prostrating because the Muslims did it, but they were in competition with the Muslims, right? If we would be in Japan, I'm not sure we would stop because I don't think we would feel like there's this friction, right? In much the same way, we don't feel weird to prostrate to the people of Het, to the pagans there, because they're doing their own completely separate religion. It's not like in close conflict with ours, or in the case of Islam, right? They claim to be like the completed version of our religion, right? There's a lot wrapped up with that, and the Christians as well, like they have that belief. And so I understand going, well, they want to replace us, and now they're prostrating. I understand wanting to differentiate yourself. I do think if there wasn't that friction, that maybe we'd still be prostrating if we lived in a prostration culture. Yes? I mean, I think also, but it also allows the king to stab you, you can't see them. They have ultimate power over you. The hardest way to attack someone is from a completely laying down position in which your hands are all the way out here. Not even like your hands are here. Like, you are completely exposed. You can't grab anything, right? So it is the ultimate showing of respect and the ultimate of showing I'm no threat to you. I am ultimately vulnerable. Ultimately vulnerable. They could step on you, right? As a sign of ultimate disrespect. But you're giving them that power, right? When Moses bows before Korach, he's letting Korach have a moment, right? He's letting Korach have the ability to lose it. All right, Korach, you're so holy. Like, I am completely defenseless before you. What do you do? And what does he do? He walks away, right? And he comes back tomorrow, right? Moses was able to supplicate him. Moses was able to calm him down. And Korach, despite amassing hundreds of people, peacefully left and said, "Okay, God will sort this out. We'll bring all the fire pans tomorrow, and we'll do the incense, and we'll see who God chooses." Right? And so, again, I think it's an ultimate sign of Moshe's humility, that he would do that in front of Korach who's leading a rebellion, Korach who wants to take power for himself, and Moses says, I'll give you the power. I'll bow completely before you and I'll talk from down here, but it's not my power to give, right? This is all God. It has nothing to do with me. That's what Moses is saying. We have any other questions? I know we covered a lot. We've covered thousands of years and a lot of different topics. The apport, so like, let's go back to korim and hishtachavim, right? A lot of people do this. They do korim, they bend their knees, and then they do this, right? Korim, you should just go straight to going down, right? There's no bowing of the knees. For those of us who stand now, who live in a culture of standing, there is a Kabbalistic idea of bending the knees. But korim doesn't require that. You just need to go down on your knees, right? Once you're here, you're doing kara. You're like, you could either put your face down, you could put your hands up. You're doing kafresh ayin just by being on your knees. Because we don't know what to do with these words. Like, in English, what does prostration mean? Most of the time when people say prostration in English, we mean what the Muslims do, right? We mean someone sick and they can't get up. But like, we use prostration to mean like this. Use prostration to mean this. We use prostration to mean this. Like, we have a lack of words in English to describe all the different forms in which we as Jews have a history of prostration, right? So in English, you're finding all these different, you're bending the knee, you're bowing, you're kneeling. These are 3 to 4 different ways to translate the same word, because English, we don't have enough words to describe these forms, right? So, and for example, I don't think the Muslims have the completely laying down flat as part of their prostration. Yeah, they do. They do on the knees and kind of, right? They do kara, right? They don't have hishtachavah where they lay completely flat. Yeah, they'll put their forehead to the floor. I would do that, but like, I have a mic in front of me, you know. Okay. I mean, I don't think that prostration was something that was unique to us. I think it was, as the Greeks described, an Oriental custom. It started at the Middle East and went all the way to the Far East. All the way. You could describe this as like a completely Eastern custom and have that be really far-reaching, right? So, yeah, other people prostrate. But it was normative, and you did it in front of humans, and you did it for your deity, and you did it as a way to show respect. Right, I believe Bathsheba prostrates in front of David when he becomes inaugurated. You'll see prostration come up in all sorts of weird places, but the reason I'm giving this class is because I think a lot of people don't understand these terms. They might think that this is bowing when it's not, right? Bowing is always on your knees. What we do now is standing, right? And even doing this is not kara, because the Rambam described kara as one thing. What was its only defining feature? On the knees. You could be completely sitting up on your knees. You could have your hands up. You could do all, or you could be all the way down here. The one defining factor is that it's always on the knees. Once it's not this, you're not really doing kafresh ayin anymore. You're no longer bowing to the Rambam. Fascinating. Are we all good? Any other questions? No? Shabbat shalom. Thank you for coming to this class. I hope it was interesting. I know it was a very, maybe not the most interesting topic, but I appreciate you coming. Hopefully we all learned something. Thank you so much. Shabbat shalom. Sure. If you want to give me back the source sheets, you can.